Good morning, karibuni sana. Welcome back to Tsalwas. Here we are about vulnerability, acceptance and hope. Asanteni sana. Those of us that are new, you've just met this link somewhere, kindly take some time and subscribe to our YouTube channel and share the link with somebody that you think would benefit from this. Of course, recently you've been seeing us together, me and Tsalwas, because we are doing Ndoa with the Tsalwas, Ndoa with the Tsalwas. And now we want to talk about dealing with in-laws in a cross-cultural marriage. Of course, we need to begin by saying that when you are dealing with in-laws in the same culture, it is different. I don't know, but I think it's different from when you are dealing with in-laws from a cross-cultural perspective, which is common, which is more obvious that the dynamics are quite different. So we are here to share our journey on how we have been able to deal with in-laws who have different cultural things, and we have cultural beliefs and they believe differently. We are also tried to establish our culture for our home, but then our in-laws, there's nothing we can do about it. But how do we deal with in-laws? So
how do I deal with my in-laws? I love them. Well, in-laws, I think one, it's to be ready to deal with your people. I have the responsibility to deal with my people because I do understand them more than she does. And she also has a responsibility to deal with her people because she understands her people better than I do. One of the things that would be very that one has to deal with, is actually when it relates to support and particularly finances, so to say. It has to, there are two ways that personally I've interacted with that. Is one, before we got married, there was that small support that my people were receiving from me, and probably she was also, her people were getting support from her. But then we come together, and the expectation is actually that support will now double because there is additional funds that have come. And I don't know why people don't think about there is additional responsibility that has come, and the funds most likely have not increased. So the expectations are...
Or there are no funds at all.
Or there are no funds. You are right. Most often there are no... and we don't have enough for even ourselves, but so I have to deal with them. When they ask for money, I have to say no. That is one. But anytime we have gone home together, I have always ensured that I never give money to my mother. I never give money to my mother. If she asks me for money, we will talk about it, and then she will be the one to give that money to her. One, that in my thinking, that is one, to try to help my mother, who is in-law, and anyone else to understand that now, if you want something, this is the right person to go through, to talk to. Most likely she will get it, but not over phone. When we are at home, we do that.
Yeah, in-laws can be tricky to deal with, especially in a cross-cultural marriage, where sometimes you have siblings. When you have siblings and you have relatives, and his relatives feel more entitled to him than I am. Juu si ni mimi ndio nimekuja, and also my relatives feel more entitled to me than he is because si yeye ndio intruder hapa, if they are my siblings we are talking about. So how to deal with in-laws? Number one is the biblical principle of living and cleaving. Like you ought to live completely, like live mentally, not socially, but you have to live. Probably before you got married to this person, you knew that my mother was my priority, or my sister was my priority, or my auntie, whoever it was your priority. But now it is your spouse, it is your husband who is your priority. So it's no longer your husband, your spouse comes first. For the Bible says then that for this reason a man shall leave his mother and father and be
united
to his wife. So living and cleaving, as in you live and cleave. Now what this means, this living has many issues to it. If you have left, you have actually left. One of the mistakes we do, we live physically but we never live emotionally. We are still, and psychologically we are still attached to our people. Even financially we have not left. So before you do anything as a wife, you have to consult your mother, you have to consult your father. If you have issues with your husband, you have to tell your father, you tell your mother, you tell your siblings. If you have issues, anything, before you do anything, you tell. And then there are these mama's boys, for lack of a better word. The men who never leave their mothers. You are married to your wife, but because you used to consult your mother in everything, you begin now to my brother, you will break your marriage. You consult your mother before you do anything. Or you have conflict. By the way, when you have conflict as a couple, the worst place you can ever go is back to your families. You can't, I mean, when you go, like for example, if I have issues with Salon, assuming I have issues with him, and then the first person I talk to is my mother will never be objective. She will always be on my side. Or we have issues with Salwa, and the first person she talks to is the mother. The mother will never be on my side, or will never be objective, not being on anyone's side. So you cannot solve issues with in-laws, because in-laws will never ever be objective. They will always be subjective. They will take sides, and that will happen. So when you have left, please consider living completely. Try and sort your issues, the two of you. If you cannot sort your issues, the two of you, please do not involve in-laws. Keep a respectable distance, emotionally, socially, like keep a respectable distance for your marriage. That way your marriage will survive. Somebody has said that marriage is never broken by the two of you. It's broken by the third parties. And in this case, most third parties are in-laws. Because that time when I'm very annoyed with Salwa, and I tell my relative, maybe I tell my sister, how Salwa did 1, 2, 3, blah, blah. And you know that time I'm just guided by emotions. I will say many things that I will not be able to take back. They develop a sense of disrespect towards him. Why? Because they have already taken side. You know, blood is thicker than water. That's what they say. So dealing with in-laws is a very tricky ground, and one needs to actually leave. If you have left, leave. Like leave. And let your in-laws not be your first option. Of course, there are people that say they have they have tight families where, you know, that is the place you go, blah, 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 blah. But that has a big effect on your marriage. Yes. That's what I think.
She's given the perspective where I go back to my people and she goes back to her people to be able to share what the experiences and the pains that you're going through as a couple. But there is also another dangerous thing to not to do, where we have conflict, then I call her mother, or she calls my father to report me to my father. That is very bad. That is very bad. Because what you're trying to do, you're trying to make yourself acceptable in a place that the person who should work towards your acceptability is actually your spouse. And so if you say I did to my people, they may not agree with you 100 or believe you 100%. So if I go and say and counter that with even just a small lie, they will believe my lie more than yours, and that puts you in a very awkward place. I think it is necessary that issues between the two of us, we sort them, and if it is necessary that we have to find help from elsewhere, it must never be our relatives or our in-laws, because of the vested interest that each of our relatives could be having in our relationship. But when we talk about also living, one of the most difficult element as well is this aspect of cleaving. But you cannot cleave unless you have left. You have to live to cleave. When you live emotionally, because we are emotional beings, you have to work at cleaving emotionally to your spouse. When you live financially from your family, you have to cleave financially to your spouse. When you live socially and psychologically, you have to cleave socially and psychologically to your spouse. So don't just live and then become an independent person that has nowhere that they have cleaved, because that as well is a source of conflict, a source of trouble in relationships, particularly cross cultural or intercultural relationships. That cleaving is so important. Of course, it happens with time as you continuously work at trusting one another and building this relationship to the extent that my mother's word against her, I will always take her side, not my mother's side. Even though you say blood is thicker than water, now this relationship must be the thickest than the blood that is between me and my mother. Because remember, we are establishing a new unit that is going to be a base for other lives. So we cannot play with it.
Another not to do when dealing with in-laws cross-culturally, or even not cross-culturally, but majorly, is never expose your partner's weaknesses to your relatives or to your in-laws. What do I mean by that? Of course, as we have lived together with Tsalwas, or as we continue to live together, there are some weaknesses that are quite more obvious. That, or weaknesses in me that are quite obvious, that he knows this is a weakness. So it is his responsibility to cover me from his people, to cover my weaknesses. You know that thing of never correct your spouse in public. Support them in public, correct them in private. By the way, na feel ni kama hiyo ni point kubwa sana.
Tweetable.
Support your wife, your spouse in public, correct them in private. Yes. So never expose your spouse's weaknesses to your in-laws. For example, if someone knows that I am not good at cooking ugali according to his standards, when we go to the village, he should not now then insist that I should make ugali, because I will make ugali that is not ready, that is not good for his people, and then that would be, or if we have conflict, for example, weaknesses come out when we have conflict. That conflict should not be exposed or discussed with the in-laws. If someone does not have a job, or my salary is bigger than his, I should not let my people know, mimi huko ndio ninalipanga bills. Even that car is mine, or that thing is mine. I'm the one who pays maternity bills, and so on and so forth. So you should never expose your spouse's weaknesses to your in-laws, and not only to your in-laws. women, to please do not, or men, you should never expose your spouse publicly, their weaknesses. Get a support system. I think one of the challenges you see that people have, or we have, is we live in a marriage like it's a desert. We live alone in isolation. You get married and this is my marriage, then these are my issues. I think these are the reasons why people now begin to go back to the in-laws. Establish a support system. Be part of a couples group where you can, and you know you are safe, where you can report, you can say this is it without fear, and you will get help. If that is not possible, talk to your pastor, I mean in church or somewhere. Just establish a support system for your spouse, for your marriage, so that you do not have now to keep on going back to your in-laws and to discuss things that should not be discussed with your in-laws.
Yes, and it's important to have a community around you as a couple, and that has helped us, particularly when we have joys and loss and moments of sadness in our life. Actually, the people who come to our aid, to our help, mostly are friends that we have actually made in this relationship. Now, there is also an element of talking of community. There is an element that we have also to be sensitive and careful about in terms of living. Many people would be willing to leave their families and cleave to their spouses, but there is another group that can as well be dangerous if not managed. The friends that you had before you got married, you have to work at it in such a way, if you want to keep them to be your friends even when you're married, try and cultivate an environment where now your spouse can as well become a friend to these people. Otherwise, they can as well be a source of interference to your relationship with your spouse. For example, you used to go out with your friends. You used to
spend the night.
Sleepovers, or of course here we will not talk about partying because we don't stand for such. And so maybe you used to go for sleepovers with your friends, used to go watch movies and all those things with your friends. Now, if your friends have not become mutual friends to your spouse and you still want to continue with those things with your friends, be sure you'll be in trouble, you will be in conflict with your spouse. So as we continue to live and interact and cleave to our spouse, I think it is also necessary that you are leaving the friends, or if you are carrying them along into this new relationship, your spouse then has to become part and parcel of that. So that cleaving socially means that your friends, if they are necessary and they will add value to our relationship, then they ought to become my friends. But if they are people that are not going to add value to our relationship, our family, our marriage, those are the kind of friends that you must leave so that you cleave to your spouse.
And that marks the end of this video. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation, Ndoa with the Tsalwas. Asanteni sana for being part of us. We continue. Please be sure that your comments are highly appreciated. Let us know how we can do better, some of the things we can talk about, or some of the things that we can address. But always remember that here at Tsalwas, we are about vulnerability, acceptance and hope, and we actually pour out our lives here to you guys.
Yes, you could even ask a question that will be a basis of our next video.
Thank you so much. God bless you here at Tsalwas. It's a
bye
goodbye.